Good Monday morning and welcome to this Arctic cold blast here in North Georgia. I'm meteorologist Melissa Knorr with this 11 Alive Weather Impact extended update here on 11 Alive Plus. Thank you to those of you who are joining us on YouTube as well. So if you've stepped outside today, you have noticed a huge difference in how it feels outside now versus what it did yesterday at this time. We have really, quite honestly, changed seasons in a matter of 12 to 24 hours, and now the Arctic cold is here. So our weather impact alert runs today through Tuesday morning, and the reason why we've issued this alert is because it is a huge shock to the system today with the cold, windy conditions, and then we're expecting our first widespread freeze of the season as we head into tomorrow morning. Some areas already drop below freezing first thing this morning, but dressing warmly, that's the way to beat the weather today. And if you have any little less cold tolerant plants you want to last outside a little bit longer, you can cover those up with a sheet, or if they're potted plants, you can just bring them in the garage and that will do the job there as we look at the overnight period tonight. Why? Okay, why are we seeing such big cold blasts? Well, I'll tell you what happens year round, and especially during the winter months. With the circulation up at the North Pole, it's called the polar vortex. You've heard about that. Pole is the root of polar, so polar vortex. It is a circulation that holds a lot of very cold air. Well, when that circulation or the jet stream weakens, it can send a little lobe of it south and send cold, dry air south as well. So that's what we have going on right now. We have this huge dip in the jet stream. A little lobe of the polar vortex is kind of weakened. It's erratic and wobbly. It's allowing for this really cold, dry Arctic air to spill south. And so we're actually seeing that our dew points in Atlanta are dropping into the teens during the day today, which is very cold, dry air. The dew points is a measure of how dry or humid it is. When we see the humidity levels, the dew points dropping into the tens or the teens, we call that Arctic air. When we see it dropping into the minus numbers, well, then we can call it polar air. But this is Arctic air that we have overhead. And man, it's a huge difference now from 24 hours ago. We were up in the 70s yesterday afternoon. Right now in Atlanta, we are running almost 30 degrees colder than it was yesterday at this time. All across the map, everywhere you step outside. Yesterday, you needed like a light sweater at most. Today, you need the big winter coats all day today. You can see the sunshine over Atlanta. Oh, the fall foliage is beautiful outside, but I want you to notice how this camera is kind of shaking occasionally, and that's because we have strong, gusty west-northwest winds. Currently in town, it's 38 degrees. It feels like 27 because those winds are sustained out of the west-northwest at 22 miles per hour. We're seeing that the dew point is now down to 20. And I actually want to take this, and I'm going to pull in our dew point of what it is right now all across North Georgia, because you're going to see the difference. Look, 15 in Dalton, 17 Canton, 20 in Atlanta, 21 in Covington. And where have we been in the last 24 hours with these dew points? Well, we were all the way up to 50 yesterday at 2 o'clock. Then the front moved through, and that dropped us instantly. 7 degrees for our temperature in 1 hour yesterday afternoon. And the dew point dropped instantly by 8 degrees down to 42 at 3 yesterday. You can see we've been dropping down those dew points all the way into the 20s the last couple of hours. And we're going to see them dropping even lower as we head into the afternoon. And here's why. We still are not done with that cold, dry air mass blowing in. The gusty winds today is advecting or pushing in the cold, dry air throughout our Monday. So the winds right now are gusting out of the west-northwest. These gusts are topping out close to 30 miles an hour. There's no wind advisory issued for this afternoon, but they could issue a wind advisory because especially over the higher elevations in the North Georgia mountains, some of those wind gusts could easily be 35, 40 miles an hour. Wind advisory criteria is generally about 40 miles an hour. So what is it doing to our temperatures? Still 43 in Eatonton. You can see where that colder air has arrived first. We're at 29 in Blairsville, 33 in Canton right now, and 37 in Marietta. Across the board, the feels like temperatures 20s and low 30s. It feels like 23 in Blairsville, Canton 23, 27 in Marietta, and it is feeling like 27 here in Atlanta. And we can widen out that map and you can see the footprint of that cold Arctic air all across the lower 48. And you can see it spilled south and up into the Great Lakes, and then it's still spilling south into the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley. We're kind of in the firing line for that coldest part of the air through the day today. So our feels like temperature in Atlanta is 27. When you hit the Appalachian Mountains and the Blue Ridge, it doesn't penetrate across those mountains as easily, as quickly. So Raleigh still feels like 39, DC feeling like 39, 41 and 39. Boston feels like 50. Yeah, so the front hasn't made it there yet, but it has arrived here, and we can feel that difference outside. In fact, it's not just the cold that's a weather story. In some of these areas, we're talking about snow showers and lake effect snow. It will cause some travel issues throughout the day. Now let's talk specifically about Atlanta and where we're going to go. So this morning we got all the way down to lows kind of in the low 30s here in the metro, and we had 20s up to the north. As we go into the afternoon, we're going to top out close to 40 degrees. The wind chill is going to stay in the 30s because remember, anytime the wind is sustained and your temperature is below 50, that creates a wind chill effect. So when I step outside, if I didn't have any sleeves on, it would feel like it's 31 outside this afternoon. This is why we bundle up in lots of layers when it's cold and windy outside. Tomorrow morning down to a low of 27. So that's going to be our hard freeze, our first hard freeze of the season. And in Atlanta, I was looking at some of the numbers. We're only within a couple degrees of our record low high temperature for the day today. 40 is our forecast. The record low highs this time of year are generally upper 30s to right around 40 degrees. They're mostly in the 30s. So we're close to records. And then for tomorrow morning, 27, that forecast. Many of our record lows, we have an incredibly difficult time of actually getting to those. And the reason why is Atlanta, a lot of our records are set back in the 1920s and 1930s and 1940s. Well, what did we not have in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s? All the skyscrapers and the asphalt and the concrete in Atlanta. So that creates what's called an urban heat island effect, where we have so much of those impervious surfaces and it re-emits heat in the overnight. It kind of traps in the heat. So we have a really difficult time setting record lows in the city. We could set record highs, any day of the year, but record lows are really hard to set because our topography looks a lot different, or at least the cityscape looks a lot different than it did when a lot of these lows were set. But it is going to be cold. In fact, in Atlanta, we average our first hard freeze of the fall December 8th. That's when we get down to 28 degrees. And I'll show you those cold weather stats. Let me pull them up. So we average in Atlanta our first frost of the season. That's when we get down to 36 degrees November 4th. We average our first freezing temperature, which is 32 November 16th. We average our first hard freeze. That's when the growing season's over, 28 degrees December 8th. Well, we're forecasting 27 for tonight's low. That is very cold outside, and that would be hard freeze territory. So that is in a solid almost month in advance. Today is the 10th of November, and December 8th is almost a month. It's a full 4 weeks from now. So it's going to feel like the upper teens, low 20s tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow afternoon, the winds are much lighter outside. So this is going to help us rebound into the upper 40s. And then as we get into the rest of the week, this is such a short-lived cold snap. We're going to be back to the 60s and 70s at the end of the week. It's going to be a lot warmer outside, but cold it is. So you can see on our map, these are all the cold alerts lit up on the map. So all these shades of purple, which cover North Georgia, these are freeze warnings. Why do we not see them to the north? Well, it is colder there, but they've already seen their growing season end. So these are only issued a very small window in the spring when the growing season starts and we can still flirt with that freezing mark. And then in the fall, when we haven't ended our growing season with a hard freeze, they issue these. So this is going to be our kind of last freeze warning, and then there's no more of these for the winter because the growing season's done. So we're going to see a freeze warning here in all of North Georgia with the exception of Northeast Georgia because they've already had a hard freeze ending the growing season. This will run from 7 p.m. tonight until 10 a.m. Tuesday morning. So that's because the temperatures are going to drop so quickly below the freezing mark tonight that freeze warning going into effect already. So where are we going to start off tomorrow morning? 27 in Atlanta, 26 Duluth, Marietta, 26, 23 in Peachtree City. That's also often one of those colder spots on the map. And then North Georgia mountains, 20. It's going to be cold. So when we talk about freezing temperatures, we talk about the 4 Ps. What are the things we need to protect? People, pets, plants, and pipes. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, this is not pipe bursting cold. you do not have to worry about the pipes. We are minutely below freezing, not for very long, and not that extreme. We don't deal with pipe bursting issues here in Atlanta unless we are either below freezing for a consecutive 48 hours or we see that low getting down into the single digits and then barely above freezing one day and then back into the single digits the following morning. That's when we start to see the pipes freezing and bursting. So people, of course, there are warming centers that are being issued all across Metro Atlanta and North Georgia. Pretty much, it doesn't matter what county you're in, each county pretty much has a warming center that opens, or a warming shelter, a lot of these. So on 11alive.com, there's some feature articles about these. Pets, of course, you know, even if you have an outdoor dog or you have cats that are, you know, outdoor cats, if you can just leave that garage kind of cracked open so that they can get in there, and maybe even in the garage if you don't want them in your full house tonight, that'll help protect them from the wind chill, give them a nice little warm bed to sleep in so they can keep their body heat in. And then, of course, the plants. That's the big impact with the first fall freeze of the season, is protecting those plants. So if you have anything, I brought my mums in last night. I've got a picture on my Instagram if you want to see that. But, you know, that's the best way to do it. Bring them in the garage if you have potted plants, or you can have a frost cloth or a sheet. And what you do before sunset, you want to do it before sunset, is you kind of tuck them in for bed overnight, and you kind of tuck it in so there's no cold air getting in, and it just keeps that warmer ground re-emitting the heat and trapping it underneath that sheet for the whole night, and it keeps that frost from getting to some of those plants. So we might have a frosty start tomorrow morning if the winds can calm down enough. All right, what about today's high? 40 in Atlanta. Hardly above freezing in the North Georgia mountains. And you can see here on our hourly forecast, in the blue color, these are the wind chills. So I put the wind chills and the actual temperatures up there so you can kind of see we're headed to about 40. The cold air just keeps spilling in throughout the day today, so it doesn't allow us to warm up much this afternoon, despite there being some sunshine in the forecast. We will also see some clouds building in, and that is because we're actually going to be watching some snow showers in the higher elevations and some flurries as well. So, big picture setup. This is the last hour. I'm going to take this back the last 18 hours. Let's see if we can play this. Okay. So, let me step over here. Here's the one little low. I'm carrying my mic pack with me. Okay, here's the one little low that pivoted off the coast. I was flying back from Detroit yesterday. That was fun. Snow removal and de-icing of the plains. And then we've got all this lake effect snow. The water temperatures for this time of year in Lake Michigan, they're still like in the upper 40s, which is warm. And then you have that incredibly cold, dry air going on top and really strong winds. So we get this fetch across Lake Michigan. And when we have that temperature contrast where we're seeing temperatures on the surface in the 40s and then the air above it is only in the teens, that creates the rising air, right? Because you have the temperature contrast. So it's helping to create lake effect snow, and because it is so windy and it's such a dynamic situation that's setting up. They could see thunder snow very easily, and some snow rates in some of these snow bands that could be 2 to 3 inches an hour. That is very dangerous to be driving in. It doesn't matter how skilled of a driver you are, the visibility is so bad and the winds are so strong that it's really dangerous. So we've got now at this point, that was the last 18 hours. I want to show you the last 3 hours this morning so you can kind of see. Look, we've got all these snow showers. I'm going to take the cloud cover off so it's easier to see. We've got these snow showers, this lobe of snow showers that are working south through the Ohio Valley into western Kentucky. Oh, that's fun, along I-64 there in southern Indiana. And it's pivoting down, and it's going to be arriving in Nashville this afternoon. And then we're going to see that some of these snow showers and flurries are going to try to make their way down south and southeast in towards the Appalachians and the Blue Ridge. So we are looking at the possibility of some upslope snow showers in the higher elevations and some flurries here. And then you can see here where we've got these snow bands. And look at this one. It's coming in right into Chicago right now. It's coming in right on towards Lakeshore Drive. So early this morning, the direction of the wind was pushing that up towards Wisconsin and northern Illinois near Waukegan and now it's pushing it down along the lakeshore. So now as we look at kind of late this morning, early this afternoon, you see that direction of the wind flow. It may still just push all this onshore. I know it's hard to see because these are white arrows, but just like that, in towards Chicago. So a lot of that snow kicking in there. Now, why am I showing you all of that? Well, because it's all kind of connected to what we're dealing with. All that cold Arctic air is creating little lobes of snow showers, and they're pivoting down to the south and into our direction. Not here in Atlanta, but in the higher elevations. So you can see on the map, we've got all these winter storm warnings, winter weather advisories, and winter weather advisories lit up on the map here across the Ohio Valley as well. And you can also see the winter storm warnings, the higher elevations here in the Appalachians. So it's going to be looking pretty nice out there. Nice early start to the season for some of these ski resorts. We don't have any advisories issued in the North Georgia mountains, and that's because there's really not a lot of accumulation that's going to happen. Remember how warm we were yesterday? We had the temperatures, actually, let's go to, I'm not sure if it's going to show me the observed highs from yesterday. It's probably today. It's going to pull up in just a second. Okay, so this is today's highs so far. So that was at midnight. So it's not going to show me, but we were in the 60s yesterday. So the ground temperatures are very warm. So even as we see flurries coming in and we see snow showers coming in, the ground is going to be fine. We're not expecting any accumulation on the grass or the ground itself. It's also very windy, and the wind helps to dry out any snowflakes that have melted on the pavement much easier than the grass. So on the higher elevation side of things, there could be some light grassy accumulations as you drive up into the mountaintops. Any moisture left overnight would refreeze, but we feel that most of this moisture will dry out with those gusty winds. So forecast track, you see as we get into the afternoon, more of those clouds building in here, and here's our few upslope snow showers cranking out in the higher elevations. They'll continue through early tonight, and then they're done. And then we have sunshine back throughout the day tomorrow, sunshine throughout the day Wednesday, and we are warming those temperatures up as well. So it's not going to be a lot of snow that we're talking about. I will pull up just some model snowfall so you can kind of see. Let's see, go into my winter folder. And because we're on a live stream, I stack so many graphics and then I decide I want to talk about other things. So you'll see me in these live streams kind of pulling things up on the fly. This is the graph model, so our in-house model. You can see, I mean, this is snow potential of what is fallen. This is not snow depth. There's a difference. So this is what may physically fall from the sky, not what is going to stick and accumulate. What will stick and accumulate is little, if anything, in those higher elevations. Of course, the most highest elevations, you can see where Suches is, that's the higher elevation. You can see here the mountain towns, Helen, Dahlonega, Blue Ridge, Ellijay. We're not expecting accumulation. It's just those higher elevations. There could be a little bit on the grass, and we're talking really a half inch to, I mean, at most a tiny bit more than that. I'll show you, this is the European model. It's going to pull up in just a second for us, and it does not have any accumulation. The GFS, it's going to pull up in just a second. Very little falling from the sky. We'll show you the NAM. The NAM always does the best in kind of cold air wedge situations, which this is not. This is one of those cold air intruding from the north, and it barely has anything. So you can kind of get the picture where we're really not expecting things to stick and accumulate. What the graph was showing you, that first model that showed the most snow, that is simply how much may fall from the sky, not what's going to stick and accumulate. So bottom line, it is going to stay cold today. We're going to have more clouds building in today. It's going to stay windy today, and I'll show you those wind chills. And so this is going to keep us cold and blustery throughout the day today, but what we're not going to see is a lot of the snow sticking and accumulating just because the ground is fairly warm. Forecast track this afternoon, you can see those wind chills at 1:30, staying in the teens, low 20s. We pop up to the low 30s for the wind chills, and then as the sun sets, we drop even colder. So by 10 o'clock tonight, wind chill 23 in Atlanta, teens in the North Georgia mountains. We'll fast forward to tomorrow morning, and the winds will start to lax a little bit tonight, but there's enough of a light breeze to still add that wind chill effect first thing Tuesday morning, so it'll feel like it's 20 here in Atlanta. North Georgia mountains feeling like it is 13 in Blairsville, 12 in Clayton, and 21 up in Rome, 19 in Blairsville. I want to show you some cameras this morning. Okay, this is Dahlonega, one of the areas we're going to be watching to see some of those flurries not far from there. I think in Dahlonega, maybe they get a few flurries, nothing's going to stick. It's too low of an elevation for anything to stick. Looks pretty right now. You can see those winds blowing those leaves in the trees. Man, it's a beautiful landscape out there. What we'll be watching though for later this afternoon as we see that batch of snow showers moving in from Tennessee is if we zoom in this camera, you see how we have mountains in the distance? We're going to be watching these mountains and saying, okay, is it snowing? Are we seeing the mountains turning white, or is it just snowing and that's it? So this will be a fun camera for us to watch later on this afternoon. So just kind of recapping the forecast. We are expecting a very cold, windy day today. Tomorrow starts very cold. You can see here by the afternoon, though, tomorrow we're in the upper 40s. So we've got this warming trend kicking in. It's going to scour out that cold air pretty quickly. 40 today, upper 40s tomorrow. Look at Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Oh, different season outside. 63 Wednesday. By Friday, we're back around 70 degrees. And that also means the low temperatures are going to retreat pretty quickly as well. Tomorrow morning, we'll step outside 27. Wednesday, we're still cold. We're in the 30s. That's a solid 10 degrees below normal. But a little bit of patchy frost in the mountains. I think here in Atlanta, we'll be good to go without much frost because it's going to be just warm enough. And then you notice those lows getting into the 40s at the end of the week. So this is a potent cold snap that is here. Bundle up and dress in layers throughout the day. Our weather impact alert continues because of how cold and windy it is outside today and a big shock from where things were yesterday. And our weather impact alert continues through tomorrow morning with our first hard freeze of the season likely. Then the rest of the 7-day forecast looks fantastic. You can see us warming back up. You can just imagine sitting outside with a nice tropical drink almost because it's going to be so warm outside. Look towards those warmer days. Now, one thing I want to point out is while we're in this cold air, it's also really dry. So you're going to notice throughout the day today that your hands are dry, your lips are chapped. You might be struggling because the air is so dry to like clear everything out. Well, hot drinks help, okay? Run the humidifiers, put on lotion, put on chapstick. If you don't have a humidifier and you're like, I just can't take it, my air is so dry in my house. Here's what I want you to do. Fill the sinks up with some water, plug the drain, and the air is going to take some of that water and evaporate it slowly. You can fill the bathtub up too. You want to do warm and hot water in those sinks. If you're at home and you're like, okay, I'm going to make soup for lunch, well, you could also boil an extra pot of hot water on the stove at the same time. That's helping you get that water vapor in the air even sooner because you're heating the water up to the boiling point. So those things can help you in these moments of really dry air if you're struggling breathing or anything like that because of how dry the air is. I know it's not easy if you're congested and you have a cold or a cough to deal with the dry air. It's just not really good. Steam the shower up, take a warm bath, drink a hot drink or some hot soup. All of that can help you when we see these really dry air masses building in. So you'll need that humidifier in your house today and tomorrow. By the end of the week, the dew points are going to climb up, and I'll just show you the dew points climbing back up into the 40s and eventually the 50s as we get into the end of the week. So we will see that air getting a little bit better. My chart here does not show 40s or less, is just the same number. So we've got dew points down in the teens today, teens and 20s tomorrow, and then starting Wednesday, they'll climb up into the 30s. So things will get a little bit better outside.